how do you make sure that experience is like there, like every time? I know nothing can be perfect, but how do you do it?
I think the key to it is getting the properties ready the right way from the beginning and then maintaining that through. Right. And so where I see a lot of people make mistakes is, again, they don't think ahead.
You have to, because you got to be able to sell it. You got to know, experience it. And then you just find stuff, huh?
Exactly.
That's a good point. All right, everybody, welcome back. We've got Bryce in the house. Bryce, what's going on, brother? Thanks for coming in today, hanging out.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me in.
So Bryce and I, we're going to get into what Bryce does, but we met, I guess a lot of people meet through mutual clients, and his clients happen to be in the short-term rental space, and that's what Bryce does. So one client I've known for a long time, and then another one we just happened to link up, helping them out with some financing here recently. So, and then we're starting to work together. So Thanks for coming in. Welcome to the pod. And before we jump in, can you give us a little bit of background of kind of what you're up to today and kind of how you got here and any fun journeys along the way?
Yeah. So I've been in the short-term rental business for a little over 10 years now. Which, is so crazy because especially since COVID, I'm sure you've seen it too, everybody got into it. That was just the, cool thing that, crypto, that type of stuff. Everybody loved talking about it to the point where I'd go out to bars and I just kind of stopped telling people what I did because you'd tell one person and all of a sudden they're just in your ear talking to you for, hours. You're like, dude, I'm not here to work,
Yeah.
But it's kind of lapsed a little bit. Obviously people started to move on to some other things that are, more niche or, more interesting, I guess. But I started off, went to San Jose State, entrepreneurship major, had some unique opportunities there to work for some startups while I was going through school. And that kind of just relayed into, my first job, which was kind of competing with Airbnb at the beginning, which, was always strange at that time because, and even now Airbnb, in areas like New York, very early on couldn't operate in San Francisco. And so what we were doing was fully furnished, longer term rentals, which is funny because that's now the new niche that everyone's in.
They call midterm or something. Yeah. Nurses exactly. Or corporate execs, things like that. Okay.
So we were doing that way, 10 years ago. And people for the longest time were asking me about that industry. And I just think it's just so difficult because we poured a ton of money into, you have to build up that client base. And what was really cool about it though was, we got into a lot of the travel nurses really early on and the corporate relocations, insurance claims.
That's right. Insurance is big,
what was really cool though was sports relocations. These players get traded mid-season and they've got to just pack up their stuff and go find a place to live for the rest of that season. And they don't know if they're going to be staying there after that season. So we got a lot of athletes that would come in and need a place to stay for the Warriors and the Giants. And then we were doing stuff in LA. And so the Angels and the Dodgers, stuff like that. I thought that was really interesting. Left there, started working for a company that was doing timeshare rentals. We were the largest in the nation doing that.
Wow.
And that's where I really kind of learned the tech side behind it, and getting onto the multiple platforms and how that really worked, and the importance of just really having amazing listings and all that type of stuff. And basically relayed that into a couple different companies just in the short-term rental space. So convinced our investors to take the technology that we built and use it for short-term rentals, for more, vacation houses. And long story short, started doing that for a while, ended up buying out our investors about a year ago. And now, I own Hugh Home Rentals. So that's how I met you. I've got some clients that have used you. I just recently used you on my house.
Yeah.
That was amazing. It's funny how those relationships kind of, build out of those things.
So currently you're doing luxury, right? Is it what you call it, luxury? Or I know it's really divided different because people really want the experience these days, right? So can you kind of talk about what you're exactly doing these days and how it's maybe different from, because when people think short-term rental, they think it's all the same. I don't think it's all the same.
Yeah.
I think there's different buckets of it.
Yeah. So With Hugh Home Rentals, like the thing that I always wanted to, be, I guess, for that company was more of a boutique company, right? And so you see a lot of these big companies that are out there where like they'll take everything and anything. It's a numbers game for them.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that, then like they don't care about the properties. They don't care about, the renters, really even the clients. They're trying to build this massive, company and get funding and stuff based off of how many they have. And I think there's obviously flaws in that. For us, I always wanted to keep it small and have what I always have called more experiential properties. With that, there's still buckets of that, right? So there's these, smaller properties like Joshua Tree that aren't super, super high end, right? But they still get a higher nightly rate because of the amenities that you give. So like, drive-in movie theaters and outdoor showers and the hot tubs. And, we even had one that it had a par 3 golf hole, like things like that,
Yeah.
all the way to, these really high end luxury houses that are, getting thousands, multiple thousands of dollars a night. Like these ones in Indio that we do, Elemento 49. Those are right next to Coachella and Stagecoach and stuff. And those are, really high end properties that, we have like movie stars staying in and, artists and things like that. But they're also great for, just groups because those sleep so many people that really, even though they get that higher nightly rate, you break it down by person for what you're getting. It's really a good deal still. So,
yeah, I remember, I've looked at that model too, because, if you ever thought about throwing an event or something, you're like, man, you got to rent out the hotel and all that. And I remember talking to you, going through this journey with the guys that own it of doing some financing. They got it going. But I remember you were telling the story where I'll just remind you, you can say it is, the guy was going to go rent hundreds of hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Which is going to cost an arm and a leg. And he's like, wait a minute, I can come here. And which is like a totally different experience because you're all in separate rooms. Now you're in houses, which I prefer, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I love that whole, I always think about like people renting stuff for masterminds or things like that, where you're like, you wake up, you're there instead of having our rooms, because it's different when you wake up and it's just like one kitchen, one hangout, one that. Like, what was that for that person? Like, he probably saved a ton of money. And what can you explain, like how people are using it, like getting out of the hotel concept and saying, wow, I can rent this whole neighborhood and do an event there?
Yeah, so it's funny how that model has kind of come to fruition now because I was from the timeshare world before.
Yeah.
Like I understand that model really, really well. And so very early on in my career, I was already like, well, the perfect model would be just to build a community of just Airbnbs, because then, regulations are less, like you're not bugging the neighbors, like all those issues you have with these Airbnbs in these neighborhoods that are, getting a bad rap. You solve that problem. And so very early on, I was, talking to a lot of people about this model. And then it just so happened through, some mutual friends that I connected with these guys that built this gated community of 9 homes, which was exactly what I was kind of talking about before. And so with that, to kind of go to the story that you were mentioning, during early December, a lot of these people, reach out for events for just booking like one of the houses because of, the neighborhood not being able to upset the neighbors and stuff like that. And they'd reached out, they wanted to throw their Christmas party there. They were flying in people from all over the country. And their goal was just to book this one place for an event. And then I was, talking to them, I said, where's everybody staying? And they said, well, we're getting a bunch of hotels nearby. Do you know any hotels? And I was like, why are you doing that? We basically went through and I was like, look, you can book all 9 homes and house everybody here rather than getting 100 hotel rooms between three hotels. And then now you've got to have, transportation set up to get everyone around, which is a nightmare.
Everybody's in different hotels. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. And then, once the event is gone, like everybody goes back and now they're not really getting that community culture that you want with your team that you're flying in from all over the world. And so what we did was we just booked out all 9 homes for them. And with that, they saved a ton of money, because you look at hotel rooms, say you're doing 100 hotel rooms at even $200 a night, and then you add in all the transportation and all the stuff, and then figuring out how you're going to feed everyone at all the different places, like you're just going out to all these restaurants and stuff. And so for them, they were able to just all be in one place, all congregate in one of the houses together, bring in, private chefs or, catering or whatever it is. They didn't have to worry about transportation because you could just walk out the door and go.
It's crazy.
So it ended up working really, really well for them. And, those are the types of things that are unique about that type of property that you can't get anywhere else. And you're seeing those pop up now. I mean, even just in Indio, there's a couple other neighborhoods that people are building like that. And so I'm sure, it's going to take off, and a lot of the other areas, you're going to kind of start seeing that stuff.
Yeah. And the other thing is, people that are listening that might not know, and I remind people this all the time. And if you're here in California, you understand, but if you go to let's say Palm Springs, this is going to sound ridiculous to some people, what I'm going to say, where I'm going. Yeah. Let's say it's you got husband, wife, and 2 kids, and you're like, we're going to go rent a house. We're going to go out back. I'm going to turn the music on. I'm going to scream, laugh, and have a good time. Yeah. And you're going to go drive to Palm Springs, get out of your car, go walk in and go, hey, where's the keys? Ready to rent the place? And then all of a sudden they're going to go, hey, by the way, you're not allowed to play music and talk at a high level outside. You're going to go, excuse me, what did you just say? Yep. So basically you can't do anything outside, literally. And then they're like, we did this one time. They're like, let me check if you're in a red zone. I was like, what is a red zone? They're like, a red zone means the neighbors will 100% call on you. And this is when I went there and I was like, is this a joke? She goes, no. I'm like, so she goes, literally do not play music. So we weren't in a red zone. Yeah. And then what that means is that basically in Palm Springs, if you make noise, they can evict you, they'll fine you, and then you're kicked out of your Airbnb. I actually had a friend that literally went there with kids with that story. They told him that. He was like, there's no bullshit. There's no way. Yep. Played the music he was out of there. They had to go check in a hotel. They didn't get their money back. And he said he signed it. So as ridiculous as that sounds, there are places like Palm Springs, Palm Desert that have this, but might happen in other areas. So that's why when you go to these houses, which we stayed in one of these in Palm Desert, you can play the music, you can be loud, your neighbors are vacationing, and it's a lot more cost effective than staying in a hotel, and then also you can still be by yourself and then you don't have to worry about getting called on and getting kicked out. So.
Yeah, I mean, you see that all the time. I'm having this conversation a lot right now because we're booking a lot of things for Coachella and Stagecoach. And so we have some of the artists that reach out and just bigger groups and stuff like that. And these groups are booking regardless, but your options when you start to look around that area, right next to where we're at is what's the name of it? The Montage community, right?
Okay.
Has a bunch of really nice houses and all that stuff, but it's still an HOA and there's people that live in there. And so, people will go book those places all the time for Coachella and be like, they're paying, $40, $50, $60,000 sometimes for these just one weekend. And they get there, first night they're out there, having a little bit of noise, drinking by the pool, whatever, and they get evicted. And now you don't have anywhere to stay for the rest of the festival. You're trying to last minute find something, which everything's booked up.
Yeah.
If there is anything that's unbooked, it's probably sucks and it's still really, really expensive. And now you lost all the money from this other thing. And now your whole weekend's ruined when you spent all this money on this event. And so for us, I'm not going to say you're guaranteed to never have a noise complaint, right? Because if you're out there, blasting, someone may call, but you're I stayed there with my family during the summer when we were getting everything kind of situated. And I've got a young baby, and we'd be in the house right next to where you could tell they were having a big party. They're blasting music. And once you close the doors, you couldn't hear anything. And so as long as you're within reason and stuff, no one's going to call, no one's going to say anything. You can be, having fun out there. And that's what I think, these types of properties really bring is you're going on vacation. You don't want to, always be looking over your shoulder, which is funny too, because a lot of times there's these naysayers of Airbnb where they're like, oh, hotels are better. I'm like, a hotel's not better. If you're in your room partying, they're still going to, show up.
Even Vegas.
Yeah, right. And so it's if you're looking for something that you can truly go, have some fun and not be, worried about it, these types of communities are really good. Or obviously, if you go book a big, huge property, they have some of those this, I think the Stallion Estate or whatever out there.
Yeah, some crazy ones. You're really remote. Yeah.
Yeah, no one's going to say anything. But I think it's super interesting to have that type of model where you kind of answer a lot of those, questions. And it's that's where a lot of these Airbnbs and stuff get a bad name and a bad rap, is because they haven't thought through that. They're trying to build that same experience, but next to, 5 other people that live there full time with kids and everything. And it's like, you obviously don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, there's communities in San Diego too, around here, people have them and they're just like in a wealthy neighborhood, older people, they go to bed early and then you think you're out there and then they're like quick to complain. It's just like, so you got to know where you're at. Why did you pick short-term rentals to manage? Was that just like, did you just know coming out that's what you wanted to do, or is it kind of like fell into it?
It's funny. I was talking to my soon-to-be brother-in-law the other day. Him and my sister just got engaged.
Oh, cool.
And he's actually from Italy, and so we've got this kind of connection because his dad does short-term rentals in Italy too.
Oh my gosh!
And so it's like, it's always not exactly the same, but it's like we can kind of connect on that. And I was talking to him, and he was asking me like, okay, well, how'd you get to this point, right? And I always tell people like it was really luck, but to me, I really also believe that like luck. The harder you work, the more luck presents itself.
Of course,
and
yeah, totally agree.
It's on you to, act on that and then kind of grow it. And so for me, I said, when I was at San Jose State, I just happened to connect with this startup, right? And for me at the time, it was just because they were paying really well.
Yeah.
I didn't have any intention of like really caring about what their mission was or what they were doing or anything like that. It just kind of grew while I was there. I started to kind of see the potential of it. And for me, kind of growing up, I did always like, real estate, just like so many people say. It's like, oh, I found myself always, looking on Zillow at these expensive houses and stuff, right? Like I was doing that too.
Yeah.
I really cared about, that. I saw it as, potential for wealth growth and all that. So that, and obviously travel, it was interesting to me. And so it just was, and then once I left that other company, I didn't plan on going into that again. It's just, I came back home and I was looking for a job, and like I was looking for a couple months, and then that one just kind of popped up, and I was like, well, I guess I could do this. And at the time, still didn't realize the correlation that they were both in the same industry. And then even from that company to then getting into like traditional short-term rental stuff, that happened because one of, I'd grown to be, executive level at the company. And one of the other executives was like, we need to, start doing this other side business under, this umbrella. And he talked about it for, months. It's like every time we were meeting up, he's like, oh, we're going to start this. And finally one day I was like, I'm just going to do it. Like, I'm just going to start making moves and something will happen and then they'll jump in on it. Right. And so I remember I was like, okay, I'm going to go, start making calls on some real estate lists, just seeing if someone would, pick up the phone and give us their property. And then, I got somebody, and then it was like, okay, well, how are we going to do this? Like, we don't even know what we're doing because with the timeshare stuff, we had the technology to do all the bookings, but we didn't handle the listing management. It was all the hotels that did that. And so we didn't have to figure out cleans and maintenance and all that stuff. So all of a sudden then I'm like on the phone, like, okay, finding cleaners and maintenance people and all that. And so I just kind of started doing it. And so it was one of those things that just kind of fell in my lap, worked out really well because, I wasn't in a position, like I always knew I wanted to do entrepreneurship, but I was not so much scared, but like if I had the opportunity to do it on someone else's dime, like I felt like that was a good way to do it, And so they were fronting everything. I had my solid job still, right? And I was doing this as kind of like a way to learn all these things. And then COVID hit, and a lot of people reaching out to me asking me to help them buy houses too, because I was, doing all those things in that short-term rental business. Went and got my real estate license, and then started selling a bunch of houses, and then it just kind of grew upon itself, and opportunities kind of presented itself, and I just kind of acted on them. And then all of a sudden you look back on the last couple of years and you're like, well, how did I get here? But I think really it just was these opportunities that kept kind of growing and just kind of every day, going in and doing the work rather than a lot of people, they just talk about it. For me, it just, I think those opportunities popped up and kept going with it, and they just happened to be in the same field. And I really do enjoy it. I really, like, a lot of people can't sit here and say that they enjoy the grind of the actual management part of it and dealing with the guests and all those things. For me, I see those all as, opportunities to learn and grow. and really do well for our clients and put out a really good product for the guests. And it's, like I said, it's not easy, but I get up every day enjoying it, which is cool.
That's awesome. Let's go. I'd like to jump in kind of the difference of, I want to get tactical too to help some people out. Let's kind of talk about the difference, because I think people, some people have a condo, some people have a house, some people have, like I have a 4-unit, and then there's obviously these big luxury houses and stuff like that, right? When somebody's talking to you about a short-term rental, they have a condo or in these buckets, whatever we want to call them. Obviously there's different strategies, right? There's no reason to go above and beyond, but what would you say, like tactically, it doesn't matter what we're looking at here, because probably across, what would you say for short-term rentals, what is probably the top 3 most important things? It could be cleaning, it could be, customer service, it could be this. What do you think is the top 3 if somebody's going to get into it in the space and they're just like, I'm not sure if I'm managing this right, I'm not sure if I'm getting the expectations. What is the top 3 things they should be focusing on?
So I'd say for sure, number 1 is being renter centric from the beginning, right? And the reason why I say that is because I think what people forget is it's a hospitality business.
Yeah.
Right. It is really what you're doing. And if you get too far away from that, that's where people really get, kind of screwed over. And, big piece of that came from during COVID, all these, big, like multifamily, long-term, house flippers, like all these people saw this as an opportunity because people were making so much money and it got popular on social media. And so everybody jumped in, and a lot of those people didn't change their mentality when doing it, right? So they take a little house, just as cheaply as possible, get it up and running as quickly as possible. They didn't have any skills or even wants to like really give a really great product out. And then the follow up with that to, maintain that and continue that, throughout the history of that property and all the guests and everything. And those are the people I think that you hear yelling the loudest now on how the market's crumbling. And it's like, well, yeah, because you're not putting hospitality first, right? You're putting finances and the returns first. And I think that's where, people have made a lot of mistakes. So I'd say, first off, obviously have that in mind, and you can do it on different scale, right? So
yeah, because a condo is not going to be the same as a luxury, but but that's still important. It doesn't matter which bucket
so
you're
like
in.
If you have a condo, still having good design and making sure that it's always 5-star level cleans, and when people get there they don't go to turn on the TV and the remote doesn't work, like those are the little things that you want to make sure that people are actually getting a good stay, right?
So I want to stop you there. How do you make sure that you give that, because I want to go through each one, but I think tactically, how do you make sure, somebody's going in, this is what I always say, I tell people, they're on vacation, they're going to enjoy. They get off a plane, you don't have to arrive in there, 1 o'clock check-in, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, you don't know if they're stressed out, tired, hungry, and they just walk in, it's their first thing, and they see this doesn't work, and the irritation just goes like quickly, right? How do you make sure that experience is like there, like every time? I know nothing can be perfect, but how do you do it?
I think the key to it is getting the properties ready the right way from the beginning and then maintaining that through, right? And so where I see a lot of people make mistakes is, again, they don't think ahead. And so, for instance, like for sure, go stay in this property before you start renting it out.
You have to, because you got to be able to sell it. You got to know, experience it, and you just find stuff, huh?
Exactly.
That's a good point.
So you're gonna find things that might not work perfectly, or and even have friends go stay there, right? Have people that haven't been there before stay there and use it how you want your guests to use it. Because like for me, I always, if I'm going to go manage property, I say I need minimum 2 nights there, right? And you don't know how things are going to work between the day and the night and stuff. Like these properties, I need to know how the pool equipment works and all the things that could go wrong and how to fix those. And if someone says like this light's not turning on, like where's the switch for it? Like you need to know everything about this property, because you want to be able to answer those questions And, I guess the backup plan to that would be like, okay, going to the property and helping them with stuff, but then your whole life is going to be running back and forth to the property and back, right?
Yeah.
And like, you don't want to live that way either. And so from the beginning, you want to stay there. You want to have, everything kind of dialed in, find out, some pain points and stuff and fix those, get really good notes on how to respond to people if things aren't working or just whatever it might be. Get your supplies really, really organized. Like to me, we have supply closets, and like I'm very, very anal on like borderline OCD on how everything is situated.
But it matters because somebody knows you can grab it. It's like there, right?
Exactly.
It's like,
and you can walk in and see, okay, this is missing, right? Because there's a space there.
I
right?
see.
And then I'll have that list itemized out, not only with what's where, but like when to contact me when we get to a certain number. So like if you have 4 soaps left, like let me know so I can order more, and then we can backfill it, right? And so that goes on the closet door for that. And then I'm constantly going back there and checking those to make sure the cleaners aren't mixing it up and all that stuff, right? So that's one thing to kind of start with. I think it's really big too to make sure everything has its own place. So like we have like fire pits sometimes, right? And it's like you have to have a fire pit key and a lighter to be able to light that. It's so annoying to get to a place and be like, oh, I don't have a lighter. How am I going to light this, right?
Where the hell is the lighter?
Exactly, right? And so it's like, you see this all the time. Like when I go stay places, I'm like, oh, where is this? And they're like, oh, it should be here. And I'm like, well, it's not, right? And so again, there's still ways to back that up. You can either Instacart something to someone, you can go drop it off for them. It still takes away from the experience, though.
100%.
You'd like it to be where it's at. And that way, our welcome book, it's like, if you ever need this, go look here, it's there. Or if they don't look at the welcome book, I can tell them, hey, go look, the Elemento. Go look at the drawer across from the fridge in the kitchen island. That's where everything's at. And they just open it up, and that's where the fire key is.
They're like, oh, okay,
yeah. Is. That's where the key to the lock boxes is. Like that's where everything's at. And then also for our cleaners, they have a checklist they go through to make sure that stuff is put back there for every guest. And that does 2 things, right? One, if we're checking that every time and they're sending me a photo of that stuff there, then it goes missing, I know exactly who lost it, and I can go back to that guest and either ask where they left it, and if it's misplaced or taken or whatever, then we can charge them for that depending on what it is. So I think those are the really important pieces, to really give that higher level of stay. And I think being in the industry long enough, you start to get really in tune with like what people need and how to think ahead. I think too many people get reactionary, and that's where people, they phase in and out of business so quickly because they're getting phone calls all through the night, like questions on things. And it's like, if you just set it up the right way, if you have, a really, really good welcome book that explains everything to these people, really dumbify everything. And it's like, I always say, like people aren't stupid, but when you go on vacation, you turn stupid, right? Because you want to check out. You don't want anything.
You're there to, especially like you stay at a 5-star hotel. That's why they're like, hey, I need this. They just want to like just get it done. I don't want to think. I don't want to think. I agree with that 100%.
And that's what you have to think through and make sure that you're answering all those things for those guests ahead of time.
I think for me, like cleaning the cleaner is the make or break.
Yeah,
they are literally like the cleaners. Like we've had in ours, we were having issues. She just forgot to go clean, and people walked in, and we're like, luckily every time it hasn't been midnight they walked in, and she ran over there. And so we set up technology that she has the thing and she gets the alert, and she hasn't missed since then. But it's like shit, and she knows. I'm like, you're not getting your cleaning fee, and I'm having to like, give them a night or like gift cards. It sucks, but the cleaner to me, I say can make or break you. That's just my opinion.
No, I mean, I tell people that all the time because we've gone in all the different areas. So it's funny. So the last company before Hugh, we shut that down right before COVID. And we made a lot of mistakes with that. And so that was our first kind of venture into that exact space. And we were just like everybody else taking on anything and everything that people would give us in any city. So like we had like our first like 10 houses were like, all 10 different cities all across the United States where we had never been to any of those areas. And so like, I'm constantly calling just cleaners and trying to find, maintenance people and this and that and whatever. And it's like, at that time too, like we didn't have a solid way to keep up with these things. Right. So it's like, we had things going missing all the time. Like, we had these houses in Big Bear where I would go up to like check on them all the time. And I remember one time I went in and checked at this house and I'm like, someone's here. And I like go look in Airbnb. I'm like, no one's supposed to be here. Like, what is going on? And so I go inside and like just stuff's everywhere. And found the cleaners were just renting it out on their own when they knew that we didn't have stuff because we were telling them.
Oh my gosh.
And so like not only is like the people you have in every area super, super important that you can trust them and all that other stuff, but having the processes in place in-house to stop those things from happening, right? And so for us, like every day, we're reaching out to the cleaners. And so like we have some stuff we've built where, we know what things are getting cleaned today, what check-ins are happening today, all that stuff. And we're checking everything off to make sure everything's, done for those guests before they get there. And so, there's times where I'll see, it's 4:00. People are supposed to be checking in. I still don't have pictures from the cleaners that, stuff's done. I'm reaching out. It's like, oh yeah, I just finished the photos are coming through right now. Right. And so, having those processes in place and then having someone that you really trust, not just for that, but they're also your front line on everything.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you're physically not able to be at every house, every single check-in and check-out. Right. And so you have to have these cleaners that are looking out for damages and following your protocols and, updating you when stuff happens. Like the other day, they were cleaning and she's like, hey, there's a leak coming out of the sink. And so I had to call our handyman. He had to run over there real quick and get it done before the next guest. And it's like, if I had a cleaner that either didn't show up or didn't tell me about that leak could have gone on for a long time.
Yeah.
And really done some damage and stuff too. So, I think the cleaners are huge.
I say they're your eyes and ears, and they're paying attention and they can let you know if something's up.
And they're going to make or break your review,
Yeah.
The cleanliness of the house is always at the forefront of the review. I mean, I'd say right after that is probably like amenities and stuff working. If the house is spotless and you have an amenity that's not working, like sometimes people just see past that, depending on what it is. But 100% of the time, if you have a bad clean or it's not cleaned, you're going to get a bad review over it, so.
Yeah. So it sounds like, remind yourself this is a vacation rental. It's not a long-term rental. You get hospitality business. Make sure you got a badass cleaner that's your eyes and ears and gets back to you. I'm guessing you're using technology. So it's like in there to check things, right?
So I've got a very different take on technology than like everybody else in the industry. So too many people, in my opinion, are streamlining the wrong things, right? So you see all these people that are like streamlining guest communication. I'm like, why? That should be number one for you to keep in-house because you want to, have those communication with the guests and everything, make sure everything's perfect. A lot of people are streamlining pricing. I'm against it just because I've done so many tests over the years. And like when you use those pricing softwares, or even going on to like multiple platforms, you have to use an API to do that. And in my opinion, what I've kind of seen in the past is you get a huge drop off on Airbnb when you hook up to any of their APIs. And so I see a big drop off in views and bookings. And every time we've then taken it back off, we see this huge increase again. So for me, obviously you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you with Airbnb, but then the best way, in my opinion, to then distance yourself from that is over time. And so we put a huge emphasis on the social media, and, building up demand that way, and then slowly trying to, turn that into direct bookings. And then once you get to a certain threshold, and now majority of your stuff is direct bookings, then you don't have to worry about Airbnb and where you're placed on that anymore, right? And that's when you can go then roll out to all these other platforms and it's not going to hurt you. So in terms of technology, I think, at least in my opinion, a lot of people are using the wrong stuff I get why they're using those things. And I think that they still have, a place for that. But for us, we build stuff in-house that we need that's going to help us out with our operations. That's not going to hurt the clients, right? And so, building out software that's, pulling stuff and being able to really quickly send out my invoices, right? Before, if I'm spending hours at the end of the month on invoices, that's taking me away from other stuff. So it's like, let's streamline that.
Smart, yeah.
Let's use technology to grow our direct booking stuff. So like we use Stayfi, which it's a mixture of software and hardware that connects to your internet, and that allows you to capture everybody that stays at your house's email address. Then you can turn around and remarket to those people, and again build up your direct booking, and then distance yourself from the booking platforms. So
that's smart.
I think that's the type of technology that I think is really important for this stuff.
The clients save when they book direct?
Yeah, so that's what's great about that. I mean, it just depends on how you want to set it up.
Yeah.
But because like Airbnb, for example, like they take 15% total, right? And so if you want to go do a direct and say, we're going to save you 7.5%, now the clients make 7.5% more.
Especially if they're spending a lot of money on luxury. It's like, yeah.
I mean, I was looking the other day at like these Coachella and Stagecoach bookings, because we do majority of those direct because we work with the booking agents and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, cool.
But stuff still comes through Airbnb, and it blows my mind that people pay that, because like for weekend one, like someone I just looked at the other day, they're paying like $15,000 in fees just for that weekend. And I'm like, you could have saved at least half of that going direct with us. And that's a big chunk of change. And so, I think the more you can do that, and I see the industry's going that way. I mean, everyone's preaching like, do direct and all that stuff. I still think doing it too early is just a waste. I think, really at the beginning, you should just hammer into figuring out Airbnb and really mastering that and getting yourself ranked really high, and building up your bookings that way, and then kind of go into the other stuff. And I still think too, like the direct bookings is kind of a waste if you only have one house, right? Like if you're going to go put all this money into Stayfi and then now you're remarketing just your one house to everyone, like they're not going to come back over and over and over again. Maybe if you have like a Palm Springs house, they'll come back like every year, every winter, every summer or whatever, which at some point you could, grow that into just all direct bookings. But for the most part, like you're not going to turn your house into something that people are constantly coming back to. But if you have, 5, 10 houses, whatever, and you can market those to everybody, the chances of them seeing your Big Bear house and then wanting to go to your Palm Springs house later on is a lot higher. So that's where I think, a lot of this stuff, and especially like the people that will use those like guesty softwares and stuff, it's like you have one house, like why?
Yeah.
Like you don't need that software to manage your one house, right? Even if I'd say your first couple houses, you don't really need it. Not only is it a waste of money to pay for that service, but I also think that you're hurting yourself that much more on your monthly revenue, to where, especially when you're at that small scale, like use your time to get that extra amount. And that's gonna, so if you, let's say you have 5 houses, right? And you put an extra 3 hours a week in just doing it this way. And now you're making an extra $3,000, a month off of that. That's worth it to, most people, right, that are at that level.
For sure. Yeah.
Obviously, if you have, a big mortgage business and your time needs to be spent there, and you have these couple houses, like your time's better spent on the mortgage business. And that's where I say, I think that software still has a place and a purpose. But when you're thinking about the way that we're doing it, like
if you're like running and actually you have houses, you're running the business and that's your thing. It's like, like you said, do it like hands-on, like the old gritty way or whatever you want to call it. When somebody books direct, this is a good question. When somebody books direct, are you providing a lease? And then also my thing is because when I think a lot of people, like when they go through VRBO or Airbnb, they have the insurance.
Yeah.
So I guess, how are you doing your leases when somebody books direct? You don't have to tell me exactly. And then what about the insurance? Because obviously they're staying in nice places, and how does that work?
We've been working on this for the past few months.
We always want to bring as much value as we possibly can, and our partner
Prime Corporate Services is all about bringing you a service you can't get anywhere else at a price you can't get anywhere else. Whether you're new to owning a business or owning a property, or you're an experienced property owner or investor, Prime Corporate Services is not only going to help you, but they're going to make the process so much easier. So if you book a call, the first thing they're going to do for you is help you understand what your business structure should look like, your corporate structure, tax planning, estate planning, all of that. Maybe you're saying, I'm brand new to starting a business and all this sounds foreign and complicated. Remember, this company helps new people just getting started every day. They're going to help you form the entity that's best for you and walk you through the process. Before I found this company, we paid thousands of dollars to other attorneys, CPAs, and consultants to try to understand exactly how we need to be structured to be as protected as possible. We've also gone the other route and used online platforms to form entities which unnecessarily put us at risk. You guys, you don't have to do that with this company. They'll do all of these things for you at a reasonable price, so you never have to think about saving money at the expense of exposing yourself to liability. We've searched high and low, and you will not find this much value anywhere else. All you have to do is schedule a free call today. Just go to primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. Once again, that's primecorporateservices.info/GITCG. We'll also leave the info for you in the show notes.
So I think a lot of people get caught up on like Airbnb's insurance because it's like, it doesn't really mean a lot unless there's like really, really crazy situations, and you're going to be covered in those, especially as a guest, you're going to be covered regardless, right? So like as a host, you still have to have your own property insurance, and you have to make sure that it covers short-term.
Yeah, because they will not cover you if not.
Yeah.
Just FYI, guys, if you have the other, they won't. You're going to get screwed.
Yeah. And that's, people have figured that out more recently, but like a couple of years ago, like a lot of issues were popping up with that, now it's pretty standard. A lot of places, a lot of insurance carriers, like it's just like a quick little add-on. Before you had to find.
It was expensive too. Yeah. It was like, because it was like you said, it wasn't the thing. Yeah.
You always want to make sure you have a contract, right? That protects both sides. There's standard ones you can find online. You can kind of tweak those to your needs. I still think, some people go too crazy on them, and it's like, especially in California, like it doesn't matter what the contract states. If they want to sue you for something, they're going to sue you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, just have like the basics kind of covered. Make sure that, that you're kind of covered with, how the money's being transferred and what's kind of happening there. And then I would say, from the standpoint of the host, I would say, even though Airbnb has like all these policies and stuff like that, I personally think that you're covered more on your own. The reason behind that is because Airbnb doesn't allow you to take like damage deposits anymore. It's against their policy. And so like your only recourse is if someone damages something in your Airbnb, you have to go through Airbnb to try to get that money back, which if you've ever done that, it's not the easiest thing.
So when you're booking directly, are you asking these nice houses for a deposit?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
Have a deposit.
Yeah,
so
a decent amount probably, right? Like,
yeah, and so the first thing you're going to do if they damage something or whatever is just take that deposit. And so it's a lot quicker, a lot easier, a lot smoother if you're just doing it that way than through an Airbnb, right? And so that's one of the things that I think people, especially hosts, are too afraid of. Is like, well, I don't want to do it off Airbnb because, I'm not covered. It's like, well, probably covered more, if you're not an Airbnb, because you have to go through Airbnb and convince
it's a pain.
them of everything, which doesn't always happen. And then you see all these horror stories, and that's why a lot of people are getting away from Airbnb. It's like, this person damaged my house and I can't get any money back from Airbnb. It's like, that's probably also part your fault that you didn't document everything too. Like a lot of people don't know that. And so, but then from the guest standpoint, I still think kind of the same, right? Like you're banking on Airbnb having your back in those situations, whereas, that's not always going to happen. I would say, from the guest perspective, direct bookings, other than saving money, because 99% of the time they're going to give you a lot of a discount by booking direct, is probably scarier because, with Airbnb, at least they have these options for like trip insurance sometimes. And, they are going to, kind of side with you in a lot of circumstances and stuff. But, as you get bigger as a host, you can offer those things. Like there are insurance companies that'll just, you can for, $10 a booking, you can offer it to the guests, and, they have trip insurance now. And that's one of the things we're discussing as we kind of grow, is just making that mandatory. Like, you have to buy this trip insurance if you're going to book direct, because now if you want to cancel or whatever it might be, like, you can go through the trip insurance, you can get your money back. We don't have to give up our portion. And so you don't have this competing interest.
Yeah. Because it does cause a lot of issues for people, for sure. What do you think strategies, secret sauces, hacks, whatever you want to call it, that people are kind of missing? And any, like, we go back to buckets. It doesn't matter, where you're kind of like, these are the things that should be in your place, whether it's a condo or this, where it should just be, and, these bring in more revenue, or guests seem to like this, or you get good feedback. There's some common things where, like, people might not know to do this, but it's like, over your experience, guests have really loved this stuff. Or
yeah, I mean, I'd say if you're talking about like an amenity.
Yeah, I guess we could say amenities.
We can kind of go through a couple of them, I guess, right? So, like, first off, with amenities, if you can offer a hot tub, it's always going to be, you should always do it.
People love that.
Like, people on vacation love to sit in a hot tub, have a couple of drinks, whatever, right? And so if you have the ability to do it, do it.
Probably charge more too, huh?
Exactly. You're going to get that back, tenfold instantly from the higher nightly rate, the number of bookings and all that stuff. For me, if I go on Airbnb, I always put the filter of hot tub when I'm booking something. And it's not that expensive, for, 10 grand-ish, you can add that. I know not everybody can do that, and that's why I say if you can, do it. But I'd say that's probably one of the most necessary amenities that you can add.
Okay.
I'd say for anything else that you're questioning, Airbnb gives you the formula. You go into, I mean, don't straight up say it, but when you go into your listing and you're looking at the amenities page where you're checking all the stuff you have, that top portion, it always is, you're like, why is this stuff out of order? Because everything down below is in order. They're telling you that the most searched things in your area. And you want to be able to check all of those off, because then you're... So
how do you do that? So you go to your Airbnb and it says amenities, and at the top recommended amenities?
It doesn't even say that, but they're there. And everything below, it'll be broken down by like kitchen and, bedrooms or whatever, right?
So there's a list above all that.
Yeah.
That's like the top searched.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it'll be things like, a pool and a hot tub and,
bikes or whatever the hell it is. Okay.
Whatever it is in that area. And that's where you always, want to tailor your property to the area and what people are searching in that area.
I never heard that before.
And so I think that's super important to just look at that and try to check off as many of those as possible. And then that goes for just, people are always like, what's the secret sauce to the algorithm? And it's like, just think like Airbnb, right? Like, they want to put out as many properties that are going to book and make them as much money as possible, right? And so when you look at any type of search, the things that are going to pop up at the top are going to be the things that fit that guest needs the most. And so, I think people don't realize that certain things hurt them sometimes. So like if you say, and I know you can't do this everywhere, like Palm Springs, you have like, or not Palm Springs, but like some areas will have like a week minimum, right? So you have to do that. But if you are in an area that everyone else is doing 1 or 2 night stays and you put a week minimum, anybody that searches for anything less than a week, you're not going to show up for them. And so you're hurting yourself from all of those people that could potentially even find you. And what hurts the most is so many people don't put dates in. And so it's like, you're not going to show up for those people because they're going to assume that it's the minimum on Airbnb. And so for me, I always have, when I start, we'll typically for the first couple of weeks do all 1 night stays, even on the weekends, because you need to compete with all those last minute bookings and get those. But then over time, you can do like 2 nights on the weekends and then 1 nights during the week.
So just to get it up, get the reviews, get them in there and just get it going. Okay.
Yeah. And then weeknights, like we always do 1 night stays available, unless there's, rules for it and stuff like that. But, you're hurting yourself from income if you don't do that, because let's say you have, a 3 night stay and then a 1 night open and then, a 2 night stay. You want to be able to open that up for the people to book, or else you're throwing away, a couple $100 at least for that night.
Yeah, because you never know, somebody might have to stay for the night.
Yeah. And so for us, that is a big portion of like that extra couple $1,000s a month that we're able to get people.
Interesting.
It adds up really quick. And part of the reason why people don't want to do it and companies don't want to do it is because it's more work. But again, our philosophy is like, that's what we're getting paid for. Like we'll take that work on and get you that extra amount because we want to do what's best for them, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that's, important to be able to master that part of the algorithm. And then the other piece that I think a lot of people make mistakes on in that same section when you're building out your listing is fill everything out. Like, don't leave anything blank. Like, put something in everywhere. And even if there's things that you don't want to necessarily do, if Airbnb is asking you to do it, do it. And so like, I think I just posted a video the other day where I was talking about Airbnb has this new short stay cleaning fee that they rolled out. And if you just didn't touch that, you're going to get pushed back behind all the people that added that. They added that for a reason. They want people to do that. Doesn't mean you have to do it the way they want you to do it. All you have to do is check off the box that they're asking you to do. And so in that situation, I just raised the longer stay cleaning fee by $5 and then put our normal cleaning fee into the short stay cleaning fee. And so we're not losing anything, but now we're checking off that box in the algorithm to, make sure that we're ranked high.
It's a good little
Same thing. Like, we're not going to do any 30-night plus stays because I don't want that risk in California, but we check off that we allow it. And then we raise the rates super high if you want to do monthly, to the point where like no one's ever going to ask us to do a monthly stay. And so you want to make sure you're playing Airbnb's game, and checking everything off. And I think, people ask me to look at their listings all the time and kind of like help them out. And the biggest thing I always see is when you go to the amenities is like, if they don't have something, they're just not going to check. And there's a yes and no for a reason. Like, check the no if you don't have it. Fill out everything as you're going through and building your listing, because that's how you're going to optimize it.
That's super helpful. Those are good little tacticals. Like anything else you can think of that's common when you're looking at people's listings, or you see that when you take over properties that like, it's just like you're always having to clean up or come in. That's just top of mind.
I think photo descriptions is big. People always forget to put those in, and use that as a time to like sell that. Don't just be like, king bedroom, or, bedroom with king bed, right? Like, say, oh, we've got, the highest, hotel linens. Like, imagine yourself sleeping here and getting a good night's rest. Like, sell it, right? Market that a little bit in those. Make sure you're filling all those out. I think, too many people, they'll build their listing and then not touch it again. Part of the algorithm is like, they're putting people ahead that are making changes. So every day, every one of our listings, I'm going in there, even if it's just taking adding a period or taking a period off, like I'm doing it every day for all of them. Pricing should be, updated at least every couple of days. It doesn't have to be your full calendar, but at least, the next month, make sure that you're, setting up your pricing to be competitive, because that should be changing almost every day, as you get closer.
How do you do your pricing? How do you know? How do you do it?
So it's different now because Airbnb's changed stuff recently. So before, I was doing a lot more work with like looking at other properties and making sure that I was, right around those. And depending on how we were compared to those properties with reviews and just what we offered and all that stuff, like maybe I'd be a little bit more or, a little bit less if we're trying to fill up the calendar or whatever. There's, I could go into, a whole class on the best way to do this, but now I think the easiest thing to do if you don't have a ton of time is look at what Airbnb is giving you, right? So for me, again, I always think about like what's best for what, if I was Airbnb, how would I rank these? Right. And if they're giving me a spread of like this night should be between 199 and 249, right? There's a reason why they're giving me that. And if you're way too high on that, they're going to be like, no one's going to book this, put it on the back. Right. And if you're way below it, same thing, we're losing money on this. So don't put this up ahead. And so I've tested this out a ton. And, if you're way above and beyond that, no bookings. Right. If you
so stay within their range, because there's a reason, because it's algorithm.
Yeah. And so what I'm doing is like anything like 3 months out, I'm right at that top number, and I'm following that. Every time I go on there, every week or whatever to update the further out pricing, I'm just changing to that top number. Right. And then as we're getting closer, maybe 2 months out, I'm like, okay, let's be in the middle of that range. Right. And then as we get within the last month, anything that's still unbooked, I'm at the very bottom, that bottom number of that range, and I'm going in every day and updating it to be that number. And it goes up and down. Like people think, oh, Airbnb is just screwing me and trying to give this away. It's like, no, more often than not, I'll go in there and see that they actually raised what it should be, and I'm raising that number, and all of a sudden, boom, you get a booking. And it's like, that's for a reason.
So you're saying we're in almost March. Let's say here in San Diego, July is huge, right? July. I'll just pick July 4th. We might go in there and just jack it up because if somebody wants to book it, it's like, you're going to book it now. But you're saying is if like, let's say $500 is the max per night and I go put 700, I could really be out of the algorithm.
That far out, no. I still keep it jacked up.
But when you're saying you're getting a couple months, you got to start getting in the, okay, because you could be, like they said, nobody's going to look at this. I'm not going to make you a priority.
I feel like I've gotten really good at it recently because you can tell like some of our properties that I'm really kind of killing it with, like you look like 2 months out and we're basically all full. Like that, like there's these dates or a couple dates during the week or whatever that we're kind of getting close to that aren't full. And you look at similar properties and they're not booked. And you look at their pricing as you get closer and they're like way less than what we got, 3 months ago for that full calendar. And so that it's better to book out a little bit further because those prices are going to be higher. The closer you get, the more you're going to have to lower the price to make sure you get it booked.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'd rather book it out a little bit further in advance and fill up those dates at those higher rates than risk it and say, I'm going to wait till last second and hope it gets booked because more times than not, it's not going to, or it's going to be a lot lower rate. And so I don't know, like everything in March now, because we're getting close to March, I'm getting towards the bottom of that. Right, because I'm trying to fill up March right now.
Yeah. So as you get closer, you're moving down towards the bottom. Okay.
Exactly.
When you're like, okay, I've got it pretty booked. I got some openings. Let's get it down and try to get them.
Except for, and again, I could do a whole thing on this, but like there's differences too. Like weeknights, I'm further out, I'm gonna be lower, right? Because I want to get as many of those booked because that's the make or break for a month, really, to me. Like everyone's gonna book the weekends up. And they're going to be higher rates. And so if we can really kind of smash it ahead of time on the weekdays, and then now like as we get closer, like some of those weekends are kind of higher rates, then we can really kill it that month, So if I look at my calendar and I've got the next 3 months of weekends booked and no weekdays, I messed up, right? And so you really want to kind of keep those weekends jacked up a little bit higher longer than the weekdays. And the same thing goes for like holidays too. So like right now we have a lot of houses still open for Easter weekend. And I'm fine with that because as people keep booking up all the other houses, that's a weekend that's going to get booked.
Yeah.
Right.
Eventually they all get booked and all of a sudden it's like, and we got a small, and then you're like, I'm here. Yeah. That's exactly. Kind of, there's a strategy because that's a popular week. It's like July 4th here. People are we go high because you're like, hey, if you want it, this is what you're going to pay right now. If not, we get closer, you can lower it. But you get closer, the options are just going, and there's always last minute people, always let's just go.
Yeah. So there's a ton of strategy that goes into it. And that's where, I don't know, obviously technology has stuff built into it. I just don't think that they can do it that well. And, then you lump in the fact that it's using an API. And I think that kind of alone hurts you in terms of the number of views you're getting.
Do you think this changes if we've had ours for a long time? You just have a lot of reviews, a lot of repeats, and it's just been there. Is it, it could be a different category and somebody's just 2 years in if you've had 7 years, right? Like you just have so much.
Yeah. I mean, there's houses that we manage that have been around forever, Like for instance, there's this house that's one of the first ones we did in Joshua Tree, and they were like the first house to do the outdoor bathtubs. Now you see those everywhere.
Yeah.
And that one, there was months where I'm looking at that and I'm like, this is not even one of the best properties we have anymore, and it's just smoking everything because it just has that history built up. But then I've seen properties like that where all of a sudden it just goes off a cliff because you're not optimizing it still, and
that's I'd say we're probably guilty of that. Like it's been 95%, and it just goes. We do try Jack, but it's just kind of like all the things you're saying. I'm like, we haven't gone there and checked. We probably haven't done this. I don't even know if we did the cleaning, all that stuff. I don't know because we don't even. It's just. But I'm like, we probably can maximize it more.
Yeah.
So
and I think too. And this goes back to just the ownership stuff and just advice for people. Don't ever see your property as a finished product because everybody's going to come in and copy you if you're doing well, and then all of a sudden you're down below all these other ones, and so you have to constantly be innovating, constantly be adding stuff, making updates. Even just what people ask for in a vacation rental changes drastically over time. Like before, these beach rentals, like and the ones up in Big Bear and stuff, like I call them like grandma's cabins, where it's like they've got like the quilts and stuff, and like they're super charming with like all the beach stuff and everything, and it's like that worked for a long time because that's all that was out there. Right now, people really want like trendy, good looking stuff, and so it's
and they'll pay for it.
Exactly, and you might have killed it for the last 9 years with that house, but then all of a sudden, all your competition is just all new, updated stuff, and it's like people are looking at yours as being really outdated, and so I think it's super important to stay up.
Yeah, ours are kind of one in the back. We did, it's good. Ours are kind of like that. We're actually going to do a whole, because we had somebody come in, they're like, there's in La Jolla, there's really not much. There's not many options. And somebody's like, if you just made these really nice, you probably could make so much more. And you're probably like, it's where you're just dominating the competition. It's like you're putting out that product, but you got to put the money in, put out that product.
Yeah, and I think like different markets are obviously different.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we're talking about is centered to my personal stuff. Right.
You got to know your market. You got to do your research.
Yeah, but like your stuff too, right? Like you say you have a lot of repeat business, which that's great. I mean, if you have that, like you could build, like my father-in-law used to have a bunch of houses out in like big.
We have a ton of repeat
in like Palm Springs and stuff. And he's like, I didn't do anything besides repeat. Like he got to the point where it was like he just had his people that he kept coming back every year, and he just rented them to them. And he's like, then I got to use it as much as I wanted to. I knew the people that were coming back every time. I have
and we're not even doing direct.
Yeah.
We're kind of lazy. It just like comes in, but we have people, like I had a lady, I remember she stayed, she goes, this is my 5th time here. We have people that come drive here from, South Carolina with their dog, and they stay a month or two. Like, oh, hey, they'd be like, you changed the floor. This is great. We're like, the pictures are saying, we're like, yeah, we didn't even, it's like, we know we had to update the pictures, but we have a lot. Like, it's crazy. Like,
I heard a story. So one of my father-in-law's friends, she has some houses in like Phoenix area and stuff.
Okay.
And she fixed up this house. She does like a lot of flips and stuff like that too. She fixed up this house, and before she even got it listed on Airbnb, somehow got connected to this family that was like, I want this house like these whatever months out of the year, and I don't want anybody else to step foot in it. And she's like, well, like I'm not just gonna do that unless you pay for like the whole year, right? And so and she did. She charges him now what she would have made on Airbnb for however many months of the year. He only stays there for, let's call it 3 or 4 months of the year. He goes in and updates stuff with the house when he wants it. Like he pays all this money just because he's germaphobe, and he doesn't want anybody else to be in there, and it's cheaper for him to do that than buy a house there. And so she's like, I've never had to do any work, like I know the guy now. He just kind of comes in when that time frame that he wants to come in, and it's the same every single year, and then it just sits vacant the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a lady, she was just here. She's like, calls and she's like, hey, it's my 3rd, whatever. I'm like, oh, hey. And I don't know. And she's like, I'm sorry to bother you. So nice. Cause when they come back, they're like, I know this is kind of weird, but I always come in the summer and I actually need the AC and I can't figure out the heater. And I know I'm doing something wrong. Yeah. So I was like, here's a video. And she's like, okay, she got it. She was just like, thank you so much. She goes, this is kind of weird. I've always come here in the summer, and it's like different weather, different vibe. She's like, okay, why would you use this? And so I just realized, I'm like, oh yeah, you could have somebody come in at a different time. They're like, they've never used the heater. They never used this stuff, right? Like, so it was kind of interesting, like reminder.
Cool. I mean, that's what I'm kind of looking forward to with like the Elemento properties, for example. We've talked about this a lot, where I think especially with a community like that, when you have 9 homes, you really have to build that repeat, and you really have to build up you have to give people ideas on reasons to come back, right? Because we for Super Bowl, right, it'd be a perfect house for Super Bowl parties, but no one's thinking that like, hey, I should go have my Super Bowl party here, right? But if you go then get all their email addresses through StayFi, and then now you can remarket to them and say, hey, this event's coming up, it'd be great to stay here. now you just planted that seed in their head, and maybe they're like, oh, that is a great idea. Let me call my friends and we'll go do it there. Right. Or
I feel like those houses, that's like so perfect, like doing that marketing, because it's
Yeah.
like they're going, oh yeah,
yeah.
it's available.
Yeah, and it was when we were staying there, like I didn't even think about this. My wife was like, this is a perfect house for Thanksgiving. Like we have, 2 dishwashers, this massive island, these giant, tables to eat at.
I would have stayed there. They weren't. We stayed somewhere else. They weren't lit.
Yeah.
We already booked, and then by the time I met, it was like I think they're already booked, and I was like, dang, I would have stayed there because they were nice. I was like, shit, I would have known.
So that's what I'm looking forward to is kind of getting those repeat. We already have people like. It's funny, like almost every weekend, someone reaches out and they're like, oh my gosh, we come here once a year. Like, we're going to come back every year now. Or, oh, I told my friend about this. They're going to be reaching out. They're going to be staying in a couple weeks, right? And so
they've got to love those pads. They're just like, they're new, they're nice. And if you're doing a good job, like you say, it's like they're getting that good experience. Yeah.
So I think that's, to kind of, bring this all full circle and stuff. I think, those are kind of the key pieces to make sure you're setting things up for success is, treat people right. Put out an awesome product, automate the right things rather than, the wrong things. And
like pay attention to your postings and go in there and up, even if you're not going to do like you do as much, it's like at least look at them once a month, update them, check your pricing. Is the stuff filled? Like you said, go back and check the stuff. Is there updates at Airbnb said, hey, we put this in there. You should be paying attention to the updates. Says you might have to go check something out, right? Like
they put out that update video. I think it's twice a year. One's for the guests, one's for the host, but there's always tidbits in there that they update, right? So as soon as I see that video, I pop up, I watch it, I get back into, Airbnb and I start making the tweaks that, are there. A lot of times they're not there right away too. And so you got to keep checking in because they they promised stuff back in winter that still haven't fully rolled out. And so you got to keep kind of looking for those things and then doing them as they pop up.
It's a separator.
Yeah. I think those are the things. And that's where, another reason why I don't like the guesty and stuff like that is because the way those are built, you have to do everything through them, right? So if you want to update your listing, you update it in guesty and then it pushes it to Airbnb, right? And so if Airbnb makes a change, you can't update it in guesty until they've made that change in guesty to accommodate that change in Airbnb.
I see.
So now you're behind the 8 ball on every new update that pops up. Whereas the people that are just in Airbnb, they can quickly make that change, get that huge spike in, views and everything and bookings. And that's what I kind of see is you see these ebbs and flows where like, they make a change and you jump on it and you get this, all of a sudden I'm, getting, $50,000 in bookings a day, and that's the other thing that I saw with, the pricing softwares and stuff like that. Like there was...
I'm not sure we were a fan of those either. We thought it was way off. I don't remember which one, but we were just like, this is not... We tried it. We're like, this is whacked. It wasn't working for us at all.
Yeah, even AirDNA, like I was like, there's no way that's going to affect your stuff. So I connected them all to AirDNA just to see where we were ranking on some stuff because I was interested. And I went to San Antonio for a week right after I did that. And the whole time in San Antonio, I'm like... We went from averaging like $30,000 to $50,000 a day in bookings down to $3,000 a day. And I'm like freaking out because I'm like, it was also right after Airbnb made some changes and stuff too. So I'm like, I'm in there every day, like changing everything, trying to figure out why we had this huge drop off. And I couldn't find anything. And all of a sudden I was like laying in bed one night and I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly when I added this stuff to. And then I, get on their support, had them take them all off. Literally the next day we go from 3,000 to 15,000, the next day 30,000, the next day 50,000 in bookings. And so it's like, and that's not even the first time that's happened. Like every time we've tested stuff, we see that happen, and that's why I'm so vocal about it. And so many other people, are always kind of getting down like, no, that's not how that works, blah, blah, blah. Even people I've talked to at Airbnb, they deny it, but I'm like, I've seen it happen over and over and over again. And if you think about their thought process, especially when it comes to being on multiple platforms, of course they're going to put the properties that are just on Airbnb ahead of the ones that are on Airbnb and VRBO. They're losing money if you're on multiple platforms. And so, you're kind of raising a red flag of like, hey, I'm giving some of your income to your competitor. And so, of course, they're going to kind of dock you for that.
Yeah, they can. They'll dock you. We moved over to Guesty. There was an issue because VRBO takes forever to get on there, and Airbnb is fast. And then we realized it was double booked, and then they didn't tell us this like it would, and then we had to cancel, and then we went from a pro to down, and it just killed our bookings. And then we had to call. Oh, it was a night. We've been in there for how long? Yeah. And so we had to call, and then they had to go in and look. They're like, we're not going to accept this. I'm like, we did this. And so we had to appeal and fight, and then we got it. As soon as we got our status back up, it went from like we couldn't book to like boom, 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 boom. It was like an Uzi. So I 100% agree. If you start seeing things are off and you change something, you need to stop and immediately start like figuring out what it is, because you literally can lose. You can destroy your revenue.
And, a lot of people don't realize the reviews too, how much that really affects things.
I was going to say, that's to me, I go, your cleaner and your reviews can kill your place.
Yeah, reviews, I guess a little bit of extra tidbits here, like respond to every review. Like that's super important. I saw a huge increase in our bookings when I started, going in and responding to every review.
Even if it's a good, hey, thanks so much.
Always respond. And I didn't start doing it for that purpose. It just was kind of a byproduct. But I was doing it because, you think about how people look at reviews, and it's a little different now. They've changed the way you see it. But back then, you just saw everything in a row. You didn't see like the star value with it. You just kind of saw the review. And you could tell when it was a bad review and you're scrolling through, because then there's always a response to it, right? So you're responding to that bad review, but you're not responding to the rest. And so it just was like sticking out like a sore thumb. Now you respond to all of them. It's a lot harder to pick out those ones that are potentially negative reviews. Obviously, it doesn't work that way as much anymore, because now you can filter by different star reviews and stuff like that. But that's why I was doing it. And then I saw that we saw a huge increase. And like the way our business is set up, we don't fully manage every property. There's some out there where, either the owners do the local management themselves and we're just doing the optimization and everything, or we have like local managers in some areas that we kind of feed stuff to. And you can tell the difference between the different local managers who is actually doing that follow-ups to get as many reviews as possible and responding to those reviews, because those properties tend to do a lot better than the ones that aren't doing that. So I think that's super important as well.
So Bryce, where can people find you, learn more about you, reach out to you if they have questions? I know you're super helpful, just to even come on today. I mean, dude, I just over here in my mind, I'm like, okay, I can tell you right now, we're going to go back. No, because this is what happens. You're doing this every day. Yeah. And some of us are doing it, and you're in there. You're getting paid. You're maximizing. You're like, you make more money for the client, you make more money, right? So we're just kind of like, whatever, it's on flow, it's good. But we could be like, we could be losing money and generating, charging more or whatever. Yeah. So where can people, best way to find you and, communicate with you?
So I guess the first thing I'll say on that is, like, my whole thing is I don't ever want to do courses. I don't want to charge anybody for anything. Like, I do this because I love this industry. Yeah. And the more information I can give to other people, the better they can do for their own properties. And it's kind of like that, rising tide, raises all ships type thing. And so, reach out to me. People all the time. I'll sit on a phone call with someone for 4 hours, just talk to them, knowing that I'm never going to do actual business with them. I just want to kind of help them out. Yep. And there's a lot of people that can kind of vouch for that. And so please, if you have questions, you just want help, any of that type of stuff, just reach out. The best place is going to be Instagram, just at Bryce Cano, BryceCano. If you want to check out our business, that's Hugh Home Rentals. So that's at _HYGGE Home Rentals with an S. So that way you can see kind of what we're doing with the social media and just all the properties we manage, all that type of stuff too.
Cool. Well, that's going to be it for now, guys, but we got to have a 2.0 pretty soon, because there's just a lot more I wanted to get into, but honestly, it's like we're just running out of time here. I don't want to do a Joe Rogan 3.5 hour, because people probably fall asleep.
Yeah, I haven't eaten yet, so I got to grab some lunch.
Well, hey, thanks for coming in, and appreciate the chat.
Yeah. Appreciate you. Thank you.
If you're already a real estate investor, you know that aside from cash flow, you also get huge tax benefits by investing in real estate. But are you taking full advantage of all the potential tax benefits? We've been working with Tim Looney at CSSI for a few years now, and he's saved us and our clients hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in taxes doing cost segregation studies on their properties. Let me give you a few examples. We bought a property in 2019. If we had just used straight line depreciation, we would have saved about $18,750 in taxes. But because we did a cost seg, we saved $258,000. That's $239,350 more than standard straight line depreciation in the first year. The other great thing is, if you're classified as a real estate professional, you can apply this to other sources of income like W-2 or 1099 income, and you can also roll over any unused depreciation to future years. If you've owned your properties for a few years already, don't worry, you can still do a cost seg and save big on your taxes. This is not tax advice, so consult your CPA to see if you qualify to take advantage of these benefits. Call or text him at 318-469-9861 to get your complimentary property analysis. Once again, that's 318-469-9861. And I'll also include his information in the show notes. You guys don't want to miss out on these tax savings.